Yeah, that's right. And that would be defeasibility criteria, meaning some criteria by which we would recognize and acknowledge our idea isn't the case. Yeah, good.
I think you
We're
have to distinguish between metaphysical and physical, because a lot of examples of testing that I've seen are offered as physical things that you can count or tangible empirical things.
Oh, it's Daniel
And
Ray. Hey, Daniel.
yeah, hey Nathan.
Good to see you.
So I think, yeah, you too. So I think testing is important.
Alrighty, I just started recording. Hopefully that's okay with everybody. If you have a problem with a recording, I just ask that you stop your video feed. This is an interactive workshop. So what I'm hoping to do is have everybody on the same page looking at the same survey, and for us to practice asking each other questions or coming up with questions for difficult cases. So let me go ahead and get started. I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to show you how to do it. It's pretty simple indeed. So you're going to get a link that goes to a website like this. You're just going to type in your name. By the way, I'm Abstract Activist. That's my YouTube channel. So you can check that out after today's workshop. Just hit start and copy this link, and you can send this link to somebody you want to interview. So I'm going to put this in the chat. There we go. You should see a link that says sesurvey.web.blah, blah, 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 blah. Go ahead and click on that and fill in whatever name you'd like, and then we can go ahead and get started from there. So I'll be revealing my positions on these issues as well, so you'll be able to see where I'm at. And just so everyone's aware, your answers will be visible to everyone else in the room. If that's at all a problem for you, I recommend you just watch and pay attention or follow along. And so while we're waiting, I'll just talk about myself a little bit. I came across Anthony's videos and Reed's videos and deep discussions and lots of other different YouTube channels out there practicing street epistemology, and I was awestruck by the method and how it seems to bridge an understanding where there might be disputes of understanding. And I thought that it was just such a cool thing. It was like way better than debating. And also it was a great way to show that we're open-minded to the other person's idea. And so I decided I wanted to get into it myself. I watched every single video I could find out there. And then I ended up starting my own channel by doing my own interviews. Gallery view, there we go. Also, as we go, you'll be able to change your answers at any time. There's a little button on the bottom that lets you do that. So the survey is designed kind of like Anthony's what, why, how pyramid, with the bottom layer being who we are. All right, we're nearly have everybody done. So we're almost there. Hello, hi, howdy ho.
Hi.
Hi. So today, hopefully this is going to be like a collaborative effort, and I encourage anyone to just ask your best question whenever a good question comes to mind. I encourage everybody to keep your responses brief, especially if you have an answer to a question. Try to keep it under 30 seconds, for example. Though what we're really trying to do is exercise good questioning. So, all right, looks like we're all done. 9 of us here. Okay. Any thoughts about the survey in general? Any opinions about it? Feel free to just speak your mind right now at this point. Is this a fair way to understand the way other people understand how it is they know what they know?
What do the colors mean, and what do the pluses?
Oh yeah, good question. So blue represents where you answered, and then the number is how many people are in answering the same way as you. And then if it's green, then it means somebody else has answered differently. All right, so here's how we filled it out. Now there's many different ways to interpret many different statements on the survey. So the first thing I want to point out is never assume that someone else has interpreted a statement in the same way that we may interpret it. So generally when I do a survey interview with somebody, I ask them what they think each statement means. And then we, if our meaning for that statement is different, then I try to change up some of the words in order to convey either what I think that the statement might be meaning, or I get them to tell me what the exception to the rule is. So the first one I want to start with today is number 24. We're going to skip some of these today because we won't have time to do every single one in depth. Though 24 is a good place to start. It is possible that some of my beliefs are not true. Looks like everybody answered the same. I'm also in the strong agree. If someone doesn't agree to 24, what's a good first question to ask them?
How can you be confident that everything's true?
That's a good opener. Sure. Yeah. Maybe like, what do you mean by that? If someone agrees, is what they're thinking that it's possible that all their beliefs are true?
Their definition of true is.
Yeah. Especially if somebody has a different definition of truth. Though, if they do have a different definition of truth, it may be good to start here. What does it mean to be wrong or mistaken? Is it possible to be mistaken? And if we have a different definition of truth, what does it mean to be mistaken using a different definition? All right. Okay. So I just wanted to glance at that really quick. So let's go up to number 1. All right, number 1 says a statement is true when it corresponds to reality. Looks like most of us are in the agree field. Okay. So I'm not the arbiter of truth, nor am I the Pope of truth. Though I'm wondering, for those that weren't in the strong agree, my open-ended question to you would be, what would we prefer statement 1 say? Is there a better way to consider something true than when it corresponds to reality?
Yes, I was questioning the definition of reality when I was looking at this question.
Okay. Yeah, in that instance, I would ask if we replace the word reality in number 1 to be the cosmos or universe. Would a statement be true when it corresponds to the cosmos?
But we don't totally understand the cosmos. So.
Right.
I would say when it corresponds to justifiable proof.
Okay, that'd be a way.
Or verifiable.
Verifiable. That would be it sounds like a method to knowing the truth. Okay. This is essentially Anthony's tic-tacs question. Let's say you say that they're even and I say that they're odd. Before anyone counts them, is one of us correct and one of us mistaken? Before anyone knows about it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And that's a good question to ask to see whether or not they think something corresponding is how they consider something true. Does anyone have any questions on how to ask questions about number 1? Or have you ever dealt with anybody who disagreed to number 1 in the past?
I think on my first attempt to do SE, I was doing it with my mother-in-law, and it was a very gentle approach. It wasn't even
You're
like
a brave man.
It wasn't even like I'm going to embark on an SE conversation. I just started asking some questions. And unfortunately, this was really early on from when I was introduced to it. So we didn't establish early on that definition of truth or reality. And the example I used was, would you agree there's an even or odd number of ice cubes in my Yeti? And she started moving the goalposts like crazy. Well, we couldn't know. And I wish that knowing now what I wish I'd known then what I knew now as far as establish that quick.
Right. Also, it tends to the thought experiment on counting things becomes more difficult when the thing in question is ice because it might melt.
That was a point that was brought up. My wife was like, "Okay, marbles."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one great way around that is talking about people. So you could say, would you agree that there's an even or an odd number of people on this Zoom call right now?
Yeah.
Because that might be a little bit more difficult to figure out, like where the dividing line between, you know, an even or an odd number of people, like they're not going to divide it into halves. I've had people say, oh, there could be a speck of dust in your Tic Tac box. Are you going to count that? And so a good way around that whole problem is maybe talking about people or the number of chickens in my backyard, or, you know, the number. We could go into ounces, like fluid ounces.
Right.
Though, see how that could be less clear. So I'd say the more clear the thing that we're counting, the more clear the thought experiment becomes. Yeah. Okay. Anything else on number one before we move on to number two? Hey, Anthony. So number two, we all share the same reality and only interpret it differently. All right. Let's say somebody disagrees to that. What could be a good question we can ask them? Or if somebody was neutral and they want to tell us why they were neutral, that also is fine.
Again, my problem was running into what reality was. I mean, like reality for my disabled children is different than the reality of a rich person with all the benefits that they have, you know? So I was wondering what we were referring to when we were referring to reality, which is why I put myself as neutral, because I did not know what we were defining it to be.
And is your name pronounced Janan?
Janan.
Thank you for pointing that out. That was a very good point. More often than not, this word reality, since it has more than one definition, can be understood in different ways. So if somebody's thinking of subjective reality, what I'm trying to do is wonder if they think that there's an objective reality too, like a world in which we're sharing, some sort of universe that we're sharing. So
I looked at this as, you know, someone from America and someone from a third world country.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. See, realities, I mean, there's different ways to think of what a reality is. It doesn't have to just be the physical world reality,
right?
The reality of what your life's like.
This word
That's
reality,
why I put myself as neutral.
Yeah, it can be interpreted in many different ways. So what I would do, and this is a good thing to practice if you're doing street epistemology, if somebody is using a word in a way that we are thinking is a different word, I just volunteer a different word in order to go with the implication of what the sentence is trying to convey. So let's go ahead and change this word reality to cosmos or universe. Are we sharing the same universe and only interpreting it differently? And if so, how would that change your answer? And that's a good question.
Disagree. As long as I had the definition of what it was I was agreeing to.
Right. Number two is trying to get at essentially what correspondence means in number one. Are we sharing an environment and laws of physics that apply to us all equally and only interpreting it differently? So that's if somebody has a different understanding of truth, then this is a great way to ask them questions about whether or not they see themselves within the same reality as I do. Maybe they think they're in a different reality. And if we're using subjective reality, then they are Although if we're talking about objective reality, are we in different realities? And if so, will I ever know will I ever have a chance to understand the same knowledge that someone else does if they're in a different universe than me? Okay.
Some people are.
Yeah.
If I
Nathan, I
was
have a question
dreaming
for
at
you.
this moment, I'd be in a different reality.
Mm.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. You know, there are people who believe in angels and demons and
Flat Earth.
saucers and whatever, and they would tell you straight to your face, well, we're just, you know, you're just in a different reality from me, and you know, it may be not really possible to continue this conversation if that's as real to them as rocks and sky and
Yeah.
air is to us, but
Let's say somebody thinks that they're in a different reality than you. And this question goes for anyone. What's a good question to ask somebody who thinks that?
can we start with what do we agree on?
How can we agree on anything?
Well,
if
I
we're in
mean, there's
different
okay,
realities?
you know, gravity,
That right
air,
there is a good question.
life and death, you know, I mean,
Well, if
There are
somebody,
some people that don't believe in gravity.
though this question, I guess, is more about whether or not we're all in separate realities, like actual physical realities. My question for that scenario might be, if we're in separate realities, are you talking to yourself right now? Or are you talking to somebody else? Am I in your reality? Are you talking to another person? It might illuminate how we're understanding or thinking about it differently. Yeah. Okay. Any questions on number 2 before we go to number 3?
Yes.
Okay.
When you were talking about maybe using a different word and you
Mhm.
switched to cosmos, okay? My question to you would be, there was, and I'm not picking on anybody, there were a few people who interpreted the word reality differently, and you offered to change the word based on your use of the word.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm trying to ask is, would there be a way, like, do you want to change your use of the word to a different word, or is there a way to maybe see if there's a better word to identify what they are describing? Does that make sense? So like you change your word to cosmos as opposed to saying, would experience be a better word that you know, in your sense?
So I think the reason why number 2 is on the survey is to ask whether or not we understand what correspondence is referring to in number 1. Now, we can, if we want to, go with our conversation partner and just go with subjective reality, though I think that's kind of what interpret is referring to in number 2, right? And so I would like to know, and when you do your own interviews, use your best intuition, however you want to take the conversation. I'm merely speaking from my own experience. And what I'd like to do is, rather than fight over a definition for a word, I'd rather just pick a different word. And then see if we change the word, would it change their answer? And this isn't proving anyone wrong or anything at all. This is only asking them if correspondence is about how our minds are relating to the external world in some way. And in order to gain traction or gain understanding or bridge a gap of understanding on how to interpret number 1. If we can't, or if there's a misunderstanding on what the truth even means, then I'm not sure I'm going to be able to find out how they know what they know, if we think the truth is some fundamental different thing. And so this is number 1 and number 2. The only reason why they're there is just so we can figure out what it is we even mean when we say we know something. Yeah, good question though. Thank you so much. All right, number 3. Truth depends on the opinions and beliefs of people. Okay. Now, with every single one of these, there might be some way to think outside of the box to make it work or to make it not work. What do we think this means? Truth depends on the opinions and beliefs of people. Has anyone heard anyone say that before?
I've heard people say that, your truth is different from my truth, things like
Yeah.
that.
Right. Right.
What's true for you may not be true for someone else.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. What's a good question we can ask when something like that occurs?
What do you mean by truth?
Mm-hmm. Let's say they agree to number one.
And I'm not really seeking to challenge them by that question, but just to come to some sort of common vocabulary.
Right. So some things may some things may be true only because of somebody's opinion or belief, like a definition for a word, for example, like reality, right? And I guess I'm wondering if we have a conversation partner in which we're trying to figure out, let's say they think some nefarious election practices happened, or maybe they think there's a god or some sort of other claim, but they're making a fact claim. How could we differentiate these things in a question?
By referring them back to how they define truth.
Okay.
And saying, does that meet the same standards as your definition of truth?
Yeah. Or maybe, is your claim here dependent on the opinions and beliefs of people, or is it true independent of what anyone thinks? Another way you could ask a question about this could be, before anyone was alive, was there anything true? It's another good question. Okay. Yeah. Any other questions on number 3? Number 4, people create words and define their meaning. So my first question for everyone here is, why is this on the survey? Do you think, in general? What reason does this have to be on the survey?
Maybe to ensure that we're on the same page, that we understand each other clearly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Good point.
That was going to be close to my response, which would be everybody defines words differently. Faith is a real good example.
Right. Right. For sure. People definitely use words differently. Yeah. And in different contexts. Okay. Let's say somebody disagrees to this. What would be a good first question to ask? Let's say they strongly disagree. No one here has.
Where do the words come from then?
Ah, that's a good one.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to understand the question a little better. That's kind of why I put myself in neutral. I just didn't give a ton of thought to it because it threw me off and I wanted to get through the rest of the survey.
That's fine. Yeah. Do you have a clarifying question?
So people create words and define their own meanings. I guess I was just kind of confused by the use of people create words. Are you just saying that words are created by people in general, or that like as you're having a conversation with someone, they just create their own definition of their own word, or both?
Right. Now, so this is practice for an SE session with somebody else. And I guess all those are great questions for somebody who answers disagree or agree. You can just ask them what they mean. You can ask them how they interpret number 4. And then based off of what you hear them say, you can ask follow-up questions. I have heard people disagree because they think reality dictates what words are or mean. And it's important that we pay careful attention to the way in which people are interpreting this statement. My first question for anybody on this one would be, Is there anything other than people that create words or define what they mean? And that would be a good place to start.
I gotcha.
And it's only really like a good way to talk about what gets at the heart of a word and how words are used. And you can take this any direction you want to go in your own interview, though. The only thing I want to know is whether or not we agree that if I were speaking a different language, my question would be, would my words not have meaning? And if you suddenly spoke that language, would my words magically get meaning, or did they have meaning the whole time and it was merely our ability to understand each other that's what matters with words? Okay. And that becomes especially important if somebody disagrees to number 1, yet they agree to number 2. Then I would want to know, if the truth wasn't about correspondence, could we make up a new word that did represent correspondence in some way? Ways to think about it. Any questions before we move to number 5? All right. Number 5, a statement is true if everyone agrees. And we have powerful disagreement on this. All 12 of us disagree.
So does that make it true?
Right? That's great. Let's say somebody agrees to it. They think something is true because everyone agrees. What's a good question we can ask them?
Can you think of things in the past that people have mostly agreed to that turned out not to be true, like the earth is flat?
Yeah,
So some people still
absolutely.
agree, but with that,
That's a great
the vast
question.
majority of people think, oh, surely that was a mistaken idea that we've all let go of.
Great question. Thank you, Caroline. Another question that we could ask?
Maybe, have you heard of any jury convictions that turned out to be false?
Ah, that one has some emotional attachment to the answer too. Yeah. Imagine you're on trial. Could the entire jury commit you and say that you're guilty and all be wrong? Is that possible? Or is that not possible? Good question. Yeah.
I think we have evidence, obviously, that it is possible.
Or does that make you guilty?
Right.
Is there something in which everyone agrees?
Is there something? Yeah. Now I can think outside the box on this one and say a definition for a word, maybe. Though even then, is it really true? Do we all have the same definitions for words? Let's see here. My question, and this is only if they're in strong agreement, if they really think it's very, very true that a statement is true if everyone agrees. My question would be, if everyone disagreed to the statement itself, would it no longer be true because everyone disagreed to it? Let's see what they think about that.
Yeah, so you just go full opposite.
Right. This would be seeing whether or not there'd be a paradox here. if everyone agreeing is what dictates what's true. Or is it mind dependent or independent of minds? Yeah. Good question. All right. Any other things to talk about or bring up for number 5? Because number 5 comes up a lot in everyday conversation, in my experience here in Portland anyway.
I was just gonna say.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I know I put strongly disagree, but now I'm thinking about, I would say a lot of the information or opinions that I probably have is based on agreement between people, more so than deeply knowing the knowledge I have. Yeah. Like we rely on textbooks, stuff like that.
Right.
And we're relying on the agreement between people and experts in the field, right?
It's easier, isn't it, to
I don't think that's so
believe
much
something that when everybody agrees.
consensus.
Well, I can also see in a work situation, if you're working on a team and you know, everybody agrees to do it one way and you don't think it's the right way.
Yeah, there's
But you
different ways
just
to
have
think
to go
outside the
along.
box on this one, and I would encourage you to go where your conversation partner is going, and then ask questions that would bring you or draw you to their understanding. What questions could we ask that would convince you of what they're saying? Or what questions could we have to differentiate the exceptions to the rule for number 5, like a definition for a word, for example, to claims about reality, claims about our shared reality, like whether or not ghosts are real or something to that effect. Yeah. Okay. All right, moving on to number 6. And this one's more all over the map than most all other combined on the survey. I have a wide variety of answers, probably for number 6 more so than any other on the survey. Strong belief, even without action, can change external reality. And looks like we have 2 here that agree, 1 neutral, 2 slightly disagree, and then 7 strongly disagree. So my first question for the class here is, imagine you're no longer on Zoom, you're out on the street, and somebody, let's say you're at a bus stop, and somebody walks up to you and they say, strong belief, even without action, can change external reality. What is our interpretation of the way they're interpreting it? What do we think they mean when they say that?
Now that you mentioned it, it sounds slightly dumb because it's like when people used to say, wow, the power of the mind can change reality.
Yeah.
I
like
think
The Secret.
I'm gonna change my answer.
Yeah.
Yes, like The Secret.
Like The Secret, or like the law of attraction, or prayer. There's lots of things actually that can fit under this category in that way. And that's kind of what the intent was when the survey was made. Though there are ways to think outside the box on this one too. And so it's very important that we go with the way our conversation partner is interpreting it and ask them to expand on it. What do they think it means? Now they might say, well, my brain is beholden to the laws of physics and time. And so it may be impossible to have a strong belief without some kind of action in my mind, in my brain, as the electrical signals are firing around, right? And if they want to interpret that way, then great. Though it might be bending it over backwards to make it work. Though they're essentially, I'm hearing them say that our beliefs are consequential in some way. In which case, great. Now we're talking about the reason why I would want to know what they know. Though if they interpret it to mean, like telekinesis or something like that, then awesome. Now you have an SE conversation you can talk about later, and you can write that down, and you can have an SE conversation in it of itself there. Yeah. Any questions on number 6?
I just point out that, it could be that you have strong beliefs and you take no action, and that changes reality from how it might have otherwise been. So
absolutely.
So there would be a case where it does, in fact, strong beliefs with no action changes reality.
Interesting.
Through your inaction.
Through your inaction, yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. Now the next section here under how does belief work? We're going to skip number 7 since we all agree. Number 8, someone can be certain something is true yet still be mistaken. All right, we're in powerful agreement. All 12 of us agree. What's a good, let's say, imagine your conversation partner fills this out and they also strongly agree. What's a good question just to check to make sure that we understand the importance of number 8 Why is number 8 on the survey? What question could we ask to follow up with them?
I would ask them, like, what example came to your mind, when you answered that way? What
Good.
did you think of?
Yeah. That could get them thinking about a time in which they felt like they might have been mistaken. Right. Okay. So my follow-up question would be, is it possible for someone to have a personal experience and still be mistaken based on their personal experience? Or can someone have an intuition that something is true and be mistaken on that intuition? Is that possible? Or has that ever happened to you before? Those might be good questions. Okay. All right. That one's pretty straightforward. Number 9. And there's actually a diverse amount of answers on this one. We're actually still in the process of making the survey, and number 9 is one in which we might change a little bit. Though for today, let's see, we've got 1 neutral and 4 slightly disagrees. So a test that cannot identify a failure is a valid test. What do you guys think?
I think that if I hadn't,
Go ahead, sorry.
I said, I think if I hadn't watched the videos that I had, this question probably would have confused me.
I was going to say, I think it would be hard for most people to understand just out of the blue at a bus stop.
Right. Yeah. If a test can't identify a failure when you're at the DMV, why bother taking the test when you can just get a rubber stamp and pass? Should a test be able to know what it takes to fail in order to be a test? Or can it still be a test even if it could never identify somebody failing?
I think one of the most interesting examples of this question was in one of Anthony's videos with the Mormon, with the Church of Latter-day Saints guys, where the guy said, isn't it good if a test can't fail? Doesn't that reinforce the, validity of it? And I think that's just him misunderstanding, I guess, what the question is asking.
Right. It's essentially a defeasibility question.
Mm-hmm.
And these are hard to wrap your head around if it hasn't been made clear in the way of testing, right? And I felt like Anthony almost got it across the 6-inch sub thing. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you see the comment on that YouTube video about the guy pulling cards out of a bag? Did you see that comment that described that?
What was it? Can you inform me?
Yes. So he said a great example to use would be if you had a claim saying, I can guess the color of the cards that I can pull out of a bag. But in the bag, unbeknownst to the person you're talking to, it's just hearts and diamonds in there. So you can pull it out, you can say red, and you can pull it out every time, and you'll never be wrong. But there's no way to prove that that test isn't valid. Because you'll always be right.
Yeah. So this is a test. I've got this Tic Tacs, and let's say I want to test gravity. Now it's probably going to fall 100% of the time, right? Like every time I let go, like it's going to fall. Though what makes it a test? Aside from the fact that I can demonstrate it,
right?
What's the thing that what could we identify? Let's say my claim is this will fall when I let go.
Right.
How could we think of or imagine a way to identify my claim being false?
If it floats.
Yeah, that's right. And that would be defeasibility criteria, meaning some criteria by which we would recognize and acknowledge our idea isn't the case. Yeah, good.
I think you have to distinguish between metaphysical and physical, because a lot of examples of testing that I've seen are offered as physical things that you can count or tangible empirical things.
Oh, it's Daniel Ray. Hey, Daniel.
Yeah. Hey, Nathan.
Good to see you.
So I think, yeah, you too. So I think testing is important.
3 months ago.
The authors talk about disconfirmation examples. And on page 111, they say this, quote, examples of wildly implausible disconfirmation conditions held by otherwise sane people abound in the field of theology. Whoa, what does that mean? Well, basically, this is what they do. So they give an example of someone who believes in the resurrection. And the interventionist will ask the question, what would change your mind about Jesus's resurrection? And then the authors say that Christians will make something up that could not possibly come to pass. Show me the bones of Jesus. Well, that doesn't seem like it would ever happen. And so the author suggests that this is a Christian wanting to sound reasonable, but really they're not, because all they're doing is trying to justify their beliefs in the absence of evidence. So the authors say the Christian's beliefs are not, quote, warranted on the basis of evidence, end quote. And so what they're suggesting is that the Christian who says, show me the bones of Jesus, is not being sincere. They're accusing the Christian of being insincere at this point, and that the Christian is merely just trying to find a way to compensate for the missing objective evidence for the resurrection of Jesus. And so what James and Peter seem to have done is completely dismiss everything that we have regarding the resurrection of Jesus and just saying there's no evidence.
So what we're talking about here is what's called wild disconfirmation criteria. Basically offering up disconfirmation criteria that could under no circumstances ever be achieved if the thing actually is false. So the way I would like to interpret it is think of something which we agree is false, like mermaids, and imagine they come to us, somebody who believes in mermaids, and they say, the thing that would make me no longer believe is evidence that there aren't mermaids. But imagine for a moment that there actually aren't. Like, what do we do with that idea? If that person will only doubt under the condition that you give them evidence that that thing isn't there, how could you satisfy that condition? If the thing actually isn't there.
Yeah.
In other words, that person is stuck believing in mermaids forever, and there's nothing that you could do they would be stuck. And so what I like to do is make it less personal. Disconfirmation criteria is really important, I'd say, to give us warranted confidence. So we need to underscore that and really nail that down. And if somebody says, I need the bones of Christ to believe that he didn't disappear from planet Earth, well, if there wasn't a Jesus, or if that didn't happen, or if there's no way to identify these bones as being Jesus's bones, then we would be stuck forever, wouldn't we? Or, I mean, that's essentially the circumstance that we're under, and why we think disconfirmation criteria is so important.
Back to the workshop.
Empirical things.
Oh, it's Daniel Ray. Hey, Daniel.
Yeah. Hey, Nathan.
Good to see you.
So I think, yeah, you too. So I think testing is important. It's important to distinguish what's under examination here. Are you doing a metaphysical, abstract, theoretical kind of thought experiment, or is there some kind of physicality, empirical methodology test? Because theoretical physics and cosmology, there's a lot of things that are not observationally testable. It's theoretical. So I think that distinction is crucial. Are you mixing up metaphysics with empiricism when you're talking about a test? Or are you
let me ask you this, Daniel. So we're thinking about changing number 9 to say we should be satisfied with a test that can only confirm our claim.
Oh, that's good.
How would you answer that? Would you agree?
Say it again.
We should be satisfied with a test that can only confirm our claim.
No, I think that you get probably a unanimous disagreement with that one.
Right, yeah. Since in order to test our claim, it might be helpful for us to know what it would even look like if it weren't the case.
Yeah. So if you make a presupposition about, if I give students the test to say, okay, guys, I taught English. I said, okay, identify the adjectives and verbs in the sentence, diagram a sentence. And, and then I can test or if they've identified the verbs or the adjectives. But if you're talking about, God or angels or something in the metaphysical realm, there seems to be people come at this from different perspectives. So how do you establish the criteria of what you're looking for? So when you go into a test, I know I'm looking for adjectives and verbs. I know I'm looking for carbon. I know I'm looking for cats. I know I'm looking for my keys. I know I'm counting Tic Tacs. Great.
So Daniel, you're the type of person I would want to have on my show.
Well, we were supposed to do it one time. I think we just lost contact.
Yeah, we did, only because I was like prepping for this workshop and lots of other things though. Yeah, I would love to have you on my show later on. Maybe you can listen in to the rest, and then you and I can. Well, you can participate. It's fine. Okay, so any questions on how to ask questions about number 9?
Well, you may just have to clarify what you mean by valid. I think all of us have a little science awareness, but a valid test, like, what do you mean by that? Just so they're clear.
Yeah, good.
And maybe to them, a valid test is one that confirms their beliefs, and and it's a little more specific than that.
Absolutely. Yeah,
well,
always ask people what they mean by things. That's a good point. What's that, Chris?
So this reminds me of people who say that prayer works for me.
Mm-hmm.
They see all the hits, but they don't see the misses, right? So how can I help them to understand or think about?
Yeah, how would we think about defeasibility criteria? So
correct.
If it's if they're having a hard time understanding defeasibility, maybe what you can ask is you can ask them to think of something in which they think is false. And imagine somebody thinking that it's true. And then say, if this person hypothetically couldn't even imagine something that could change their mind or lower their confidence in a way that could test their idea, should they be satisfied with that? So it's like a weird way of doing an outsider test for defeasibility. You can also say, if this prayer doesn't get answered, this is more direct. If this prayer doesn't get answered, does that mean that that it's still true, even if it doesn't get answered? In other words, does this work whether or not it works? Or is there some criteria by which we would judge it to not work? Or can we only imagine it working? And go wherever they go. Maybe they've got a good answer for it. Keep an open mind to what they're saying. Yeah.
Well, that's the common circular logic there, isn't it? If my prayer didn't work, that's because God didn't want that to work for me. And he knows better than I do. And he works in mysterious ways.
Right.
So when I get a no or a non-answer, that's still
right. And that's a good point.
Answer your prayer.
Correct.
And that's the point.
Answer it. He had a reason for not answering it. I just don't know it because I'm,
It's at that point at which I would want to know if it bothers them that they don't have anything they could imagine that could ever tell them or demonstrate to them that the idea isn't true. Or can they only imagine ways in which they think it could be true? And that's the only way they can think about it. And then you can maybe apply an outsider test to that for some other idea they think is false. So usually when I use a survey, I get ideas that are both things they think are true and things that they think aren't true. And in the event that they are agreeing to number 9, I would just look at the thing that they think is false and then come up with a hypothetical scenario in which somebody only can imagine it being true. and then see if they think or if they are judging that other person's way of thinking differently than they are their own. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Defeasibility is one of those weird things because it's kind of like thinking how we relate to our own ability to slide ourselves on the confidence scale versus other people and how they may not have anything that could slide them on their confidence scale. And if other people don't, then are they open-minded? Or is there some other criteria by which somebody can be open-minded? What is the criteria to be open-minded? These are all good questions. Yeah. Anything else on number 9 before we go to number 10? Number 10. If all members of a society share a belief, they are justified to hold that belief. And I don't really have a strict way I answer. I mean, I've been answering strong disagree a lot, though I can be slightly also. I just want to go with the way my conversation partner interprets it. Let's say somebody strongly agrees to number 10. What's a good question we can ask to understand them better?
Do you mean in all cases?
Yeah, that's a good, very open-ended question. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, like all cases, all majorities, all large numbers of people. You can ask them what they think the statement means. That's always a good place to start.
Or if a given belief, was true for everybody at one time, but we believe differently now, what will people think about our today's beliefs in the future?
Yeah. Is it the number of people that makes believing in something that makes that thing justified to believe in? Or does the number of people need to have something that makes us
And that one I
justified?
was also questioning the word justified, because if the whole society believes the earth is flat and there's never been evidence to the contrary, then yeah, I would say they're justified in believing that. I mean, what else are they going to believe if there's no evidence to the contrary? So I guess I was questioning what the word justified meant.
Yeah, that's a good opportunity to ask them what they think the word justified means. Good point. You could also invite them to ask you a question about it also, if you want. Yep.
You guys hear me?
Yeah.
There we go. Okay. Sorry, I'm having mic issues.
I hear you now.
Okay, good.
Okay. All right.
I was just going to say, it kind of matters what exactly we're talking about here. Like, what's the best Thai restaurant in town?
Right.
We all say it's this one, it's like, well, it probably is, or that's an answer. That seems like then a valid answer, because you're just basically talking about a shared,
that's a good point.
Opinion.
With each one of these, there's some way to think outside the box and one way to think more within it. Right. And my main thing, and then we can move on to the next one. I just want to know if there's some standard by which we accept the number of people believing in something as good justification to also believe it. Like, do they need to have credentials or do they need to be experts, or will any number of people do? Yeah.
Well, it's just where do you put your doubt? How strict are you going to be about accepting something as unquestionably factually true, or how should you apportion your level of belief?
Yeah.
And with on what grounds? Like the number of people and who it is who's holding those opinions.
Yeah.
I might also ask them what they think is important about that for that social group.
Right.
Is it social cohesion? Is that why that's important?
Right. Some people will say it's not beneficial to find out when I'm wrong about something. This is number 21, because of the social implications involved with rubbing against the standard narrative. Right. These are great avenues you can go down with your conversation partner. All right, so let's move on to the next one. Normally I wouldn't need to cruise along so fast, though we have 20 minutes left, it looks like. Believing something that is false feels just like believing something that is true. Okay. All right. What's a good question we can ask to somebody who agrees to this? Somebody says no. Can we tell whether or not something is true based on how we feel about it? Or is that an unfair question? Believing something that is false feels just like believing something that is true.
I think one thing might have to do with whether whether the person you're speaking to might believe something false with equal intensity as something that's true, or could somebody else believe something strongly that's not true? Because I think we can all imagine somebody else believing something that's not true.
Yeah, great. An outsider test works good. Yeah.
Right. What's different about you then?
Right. So go ahead.
I was going to say, is this basically another way to ask if feelings are a good way to determine the truth of something?
Kind of, sort of. That would be number 12. Number 11 is mostly just asking, like, does believing in a thing tell you, or does your feelings about your belief tell you anything at all about whether or not it's true? Or can you feel something is true and be wrong at the same time?
Well, I sure have.
Right. I have misdiagnosed myself. So like if my conversation partner has a question for me, then I would say, yeah, I've misdiagnosed myself. I have thought that I had one particular physical ailment with this prescription and this label, and I've misattributed that label and that prescription. It was actually some other thing that I had, or no thing at all, which has also happened, where I thought I was sick and I wasn't. Right. And then you can just say, has that ever happened to you? All right, cruising along. Number 12, feelings are a reliable way to discover truth. If they agreed to 11, how could it be reliable? How could feelings, or what question would you ask? Are feelings a reliable way to discover what's true?
I kind of like to go back to if they agreed with that, which I would say, well, so tell me about a time when that was true for you, that your feelings led you to, so tell me why you think that.
Yeah, maybe ask for an example.
In your experience, you must feel that way because you've had that kind of experience. So what are those?
Right. To take what I just heard you say, you can maybe ask, can you give me an example of a time in which you used raw feelings to conclude something is true without evidence?
I have a real life example of this that happened to me in the military.
Okay.
To throw a wrench into the conversation. I'm not saying that, because I think the context of what this question should be addressing would be feelings in the context of other situations, other aspects of what you're discussing. So if you're isolating feelings and just saying, are feelings by themselves
that's what we're doing,
sufficient, or is there other contextual things and variables involved with the application of this question?
That would be a cumulative case, and we're taking out all the reasons and just looking at feelings alone.
Yeah, there was one time in the military where I had an extraordinarily strong feeling not to go out and film a civilian video, take a video of a civilian helicopter exercise. I had nothing else to go on. I was supposed to go out there, and I didn't go.
Right.
And it turned out to be 2 helicopters crashed into each other and killed 6 people.
Yikes. So Daniel, that would be more of an ought, I think. And I think what we want to know for the survey is what is. Can we know what is with feelings?
I think in a contextual circumstance, I think we could all think of things where we've gone on a gut hunch and been right about something, but it wasn't just the gut hunch. It was there were other contexts involved in that. So I think there is something to it. I wouldn't be completely dismissive of it, because let's be honest, if we believe something is true, it is emotionally satisfying, isn't it?
Right.
To
You
say,
and I, actually, Daniel, you and I would love to just go live after this workshop's over, if you want.
Sure, I have time.
Okay.
I have time.
Because I'll probably be down for that today. Let's move on to number 13. Believing something without evidence is admirable. Let's say somebody agrees. What's our first question? And let's say we're only using the survey.
What's your definition of admirable?
Okay, sure. That's a good one.
If they felt strongly about it, they must have a reason. So I would say, what is it that you believe without evidence? What do you strongly believe that doesn't require evidence?
Yeah. What do you believe strongly that it doesn't? Yeah, that's a good one, because then you can actually get some examples, right?
Where is the requirement? Where is the requirement of evidence coming from?
Where is the requirement of evidence coming from? Okay, maybe that's a good question to ask if you disagree, or if you agree to 13. That would be a good question. Yeah. Yep. Okay.
Not to disparage used car salesmen, but should you check out the car or just listen to the salesman when making a decision?
Yeah. Also, if you do get an example of something in which they do think it's good to believe in something without evidence, you can just take that example and say, if I hold the opposite position without evidence, would that be admirable too? That would be a good way to question their thinking about an outsider test on that, whether or not they would be okay with somebody else doing the same thing they're doing, and how that could maybe lead to conflict. Maybe.
I find that when people disagree with number 11, that they can sometimes agree with number 12.
Yeah, if they disagree to 11, then they can agree to 12. Yeah. Take your time with the survey. Unfortunately, we only have 13 minutes left, so moving along. 14. Without an explanation for something, any answer is better than no answer. This one's a little weird. So just to cruise through, because we don't have a lot of time, and I do want to get to 17, which I think is the most important on the survey. If you're going 60 miles per hour down the highway, you might be forced to take a right or a left, right? Though if you have all the time in the world, which would you rather do? Would you rather run the risk of being positively mistaken and taking the wrong exit? Or would you rather slow down and remain ignorant until you find the answer? That might be my question with that. Now, they might have some good answer for this, and maybe it has something to do with expediency and convenience and that sort of thing. Go with them. Go where your conversation goes. Number 15. It is okay to accept something as true because it is comforting. And I actually have two people.
I feel that people that think feelings are reliable, like in 12 and 13, they tend to answer differently on that one.
Yeah, my question, well, what's a good question we can ask somebody? This one's a hard one, a really hard one. Let's say somebody agrees to 15. What question could we ask? This one took me a while to come up with a good question.
Well, I wonder, what is it they want? Do they want in the end? Do they want a lasting relationship with this person? It sort of depends on what they're talking about. But,
well, maybe they say, it brings me comfort. That's what I want.
Yeah, well, do you want it to last, or are you going to risk disappointment?
Ah, yes. Yeah.
Do you care about if it's true or not?
Yeah, that's what it comes down to.
Right. It comes down to whether or not we think it's true. So my question would be an outsider test, essentially. imagine somebody else comes into our conversation and they also agree to 15. And now let's say that their belief has informed some other beliefs they have, which have led to some political decisions that they hold. Can you imagine somebody like that? How in the world would we ever resolve our disputes if they are relying on what's making them comfortable and not on what's true? That's what I want to know. Number 16. I give all claims the benefit of the doubt when I first encounter them. So normally I'd have us brainstorm, but we're running low on time. So I'm wondering, why is this on here? Is that
It depends on the claim. You know, if it's far-fetched, then,
right.
you know.
Right. Yeah.
I think this is on here to kind of maybe ground ourselves, to remind ourselves that when we are engaging in SE with interlocutors, we are trying to be open-minded and neutral on the subject. And this might just be a good question to remind us of wanting to take that position.
Right. Like, here's a quick thought experiment. Somebody comes into the Zoom call with us here and they say, I own a cat. Like, do you immediately doubt that?
Perfect timing.
There's the cat.
If it's Amy, no.
So like, do we give people the principle of charity when they tell us things most of the time for mundane claims? And how do we recognize when that happens? And are some claims immediately doubted based on how peculiar they are or weird they are? Are they normative claims? Maybe they're easier to accept than if they're unusual, right? 17. Someone is justified in their beliefs until they are proven wrong. So this is always more than any other on the survey. This one here gets people to think an awful lot. Let's say somebody agrees to 17. What's a good question we can ask?
Well,
this one's a hard one.
I just had this discussion with someone about he speeds all the time. And I said, don't you know that the traffic lights are synchronized, that if you do the speed limit, you won't have to stop at all?
Yeah.
Now, if I was asked this question, Nathan, I would ask anybody asking this of me, how they would, in order to not to be cheeky or contrary, but just to clarify how they understand the process of justification. Obviously, they want to understand what I believe about that, but to answer the question properly, I would ask my interviewer, what he or she understands about the process of epistemological justification.
So
that would be a clarifying question.
My question for you, Daniel, would be, if you can't prove my idea wrong, am I justified to believe in it based off of your inability to prove it wrong?
I think if you have a good, solid epistemic rationale for why you believe what you believe, I think it would behoove me to listen to it and to look into it for myself. And I would say yes, in terms of building that bridge, constructing.
So this is a really abstract question, but are all statements in which we can imagine that cannot be proven wrong, are they justified by default?
Well, that involves the interplay of human beings, I think, where you listen to the person to actually find out and investigate, because we often talk past each other, especially in social media, right? We don't get down to knowing the person or where they're coming from. And so I think part of that understanding is to be able to take people seriously when they are seriously presenting their ideas and believe they are justified for them. So I think in granting that, it's difficult for sure. I do the Atheist and Christian Book Club where we're talking back and forth to each other all the time.
Yeah.
And so what makes progress is understanding and having a trust and a relationship with people that enables you to explore these questions. And rather than like hit talking points and try to be contrary to win an argument, it involves interpersonal communication, which is not just, you know, exchanging ideas. Here's my dictionary definition, here's yours. But
so
really
Daniel, can you ask, because I do want to not, can you keep
Yeah,
your
I'm sorry.
responses
I'll
to
stop.
30 seconds? No, I want you to participate. If we can keep them to 30 seconds, maybe you can ask me a question.
Oh, no, I don't want to monopolize time. I forgot about the time, so I'll just hush.
It's all good. Thank you, Daniel.
Nathan, you know, you said there was variability in this particular question. I also noted that I thought you said there was variability in question number 10, and they both have the same word, justified. So I think it kind of boils down to the meaning. You know, what do we mean by justified?
Right. So I normally wouldn't impose my definition, though I might ask my conversation partner if they would like my definition. And I would just happen to think that it means marked by a good and legitimate reason to think the thing is true. So is it a good, are we marked by good reason to think our idea is true if they're until we're proven wrong?
You know, I have a different perspective, slightly different. It's like children in the Muslim world, right? I have empathy for them. I feel for them because they seem justified in their belief in Islam. And also children in the Christian world have a very similar justification for their belief in Christianity.
Right.
And
yeah,
it's not, I don't think it's a sound justification in either case, but there's a justification there.
Right. And this is where I would ask my conversation partner if they deem themselves justified to believe in things until they're proven wrong, or if it needs something else first. Another way to do this is I ask my conversation partner to think of something in which they do think is false. And imagine that the reason why they think it's true is because there's no way you can show them that they're wrong. The question would be, if there isn't a way to show them that they are wrong, if they are wrong, would they be stuck forever believing in a thing that's not true?
What do you think about the question, are all things that cannot be proven wrong simultaneously true?
So that's the thing. So this is like a weird layer of onion. So like all things that can be proven wrong are justified to be believed in if they've been proven or if they've been reliably justified, right? And you know, they could at any time be proven wrong, right? So that technically fits into 17, and if somebody says that, then that's fine, you just go with them there. Though, is 17 a good reason to be confident in something? That's the main question. Should we ever slide up our scale or stay where we're at in our scale because of 17 here, if no one can show us our idea is not true? This is a weird one to wrap your head around. And I'm always trying to come up with new ways to ask questions about it. Especially if we combine it with number 9, right? A test that cannot identify a failure as a valid test. If we can't identify a way in which it's false, and there's no way to show us that our idea is not true, are we on solid footing for our idea being true? Or would we want to be able to provide something that could bump our number down on our scale of confidence to some lower number? And if we're unable to do that, are we really open-minded to our own idea? Or are we only recognizing things that make us confident in it? This goes for all claims, right? Everything, pretty much. I mean,
yeah, I'm becoming more moderate in my thinking about this one now.
Okay. Any other questions on 17 before we go to the last one for today? Looks like we have about 2 minutes left, just so you know. Number 18, the most important criteria for my beliefs is that they match reality. So just to paraphrase, I think what this means is, to rephrase this another way, the most important criteria for my beliefs is that they are true. Okay.
Well, then.
Is there something more important than what's true for our minds?
I'm not sure, but I didn't like the superlative.
Okay, tell me more.
Well, like I just don't know. I mean,
That's an honest answer.
Yeah, I
Anytime I
just
don't-
changed.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Anytime I hear I don't know, I thank my conversation partner for that.
I appreciate
Because it's a
that.
recognition that they need to work on it or think about it. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, there's my timer. All right. So this is another outsider test, and this one's kind of the most brutal outsider test. But imagine somebody else thinks something else is more important for their beliefs. I mean, what would happen? What would happen if we all chose something different other than what's true to believe in as the most important criteria? Could there be disputes? How would we resolve those disputes?
Certainly, there would be lots of disagreements.
Yeah. So since there's only a minute left, we're going to be pulled out of this room at any second, and I would recommend anyone who wants to come visit me at the Discord, and I'm sure Daniel and I I would love to chat with you some more. And then thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate your time. Feel free to follow me on YouTube under Abstract Activist, or you can send me an email at abstractactivist@se@gmail.com. And any questions for me at all? How did you guys, is this
Thank
a
you,
fair?
Nathan. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you. My last question is always, is this fair? Was this a fair way to dig into the way you believe about the way you believe, and get their opinion? We're always looking to improve this, and we're looking for good, solid criticism on this. And thank you, everyone. Oh,
this link is available. We can share this with anybody.
Yeah. So actually, let me show you. I just got a thing here on my screen that says we have 5 minutes. So my timer wasn't accurate, but that's fine because we have 5 more points to discuss. So you can just scroll up to the top and click the logo here, or you go to the website here, .app, and then just type that in, and you'll be able to do this with whoever you'd like.
Right.
Either way. So let's go ahead and talk about number 19, since we have a little extra time here. I often investigate beliefs that do not match my own. If somebody disagrees to that, what could we ask them?
Why not?
Great. That's a great way to start. Yeah, why not? Or maybe even to push that point even further. If I disagree with you, should I be talking to you? That's a good question. It's basically a very real outsider test, right? Another way.
I think it's slightly rude of your part to ask like that.
Yeah. So again, this is all like questions that I've asked in the past, and you'll want to use your own best intuition as you go. If they're a friend of yours, I'm sure that would be a fine question to ask, right? Depends on how strong your friendship is. Though, if it's just some random stranger, you might not want to push that hard. That's a little abrasive. So good point. Good observation there. Yeah. Maybe a generic follow-up question could be, when is the best time to investigate beliefs that do not match your own?
That's what I do for a living.
Yes, you do. Same here. We're in the same boat. That's how you and I are the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we're not so different. Okay. Number 20. I am comfortable with saying I don't know. I'm off on my lonesome on that one.
2 minutes.
Right.
We got a 2-minute
2-minute
warning. Does somebody want to ask me a question? Since I'm in the slightly agree category, in the minority.
Do you disagree slightly because it's uncomfortable?
Right. Yeah, like I might not know how comfortable I am saying I don't know. I might think that I am comfortable saying I don't know, but how would I really know for sure? I aspire to say I don't know if I don't know something, though maybe I'm overly confident. Now, if I hear an answer like that, I'd be very encouraging. It's rare that you get an answer like that, though. It just goes to show you don't really know how other people will interpret these things when they fill this out. And it's good to go at their pace and to go how they are interpreting it. And I've heard so many different ways to respond to so many of these different answers on the survey. Number 21, it is beneficial to find out I am wrong about something. So some people say, if there's a meteor falling from the sky, I don't want to know. What's a good question to ask about that? This is a tough one too.
Well, Nathan, I'm sorry, but you're down to 10 seconds. So.
All right. Well, hey, everybody. It's been great. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you very much. Thank you, Daniel, for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nathan. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Nathan.